Welcome to the Speak Pact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Roze, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the Speak Pact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Roze.
Dive into the world of a highly successful speaker, how he started out, how he got there, and what he's learned along the way. I am thrilled to bring you David Avrin. I said that correct?
You did say it correctly.
Yeah, welcome to the stage. I'm super excited to dive. I know you're a keynote speaker at the NSA convention this year. You speak anywhere from 2 to 5 times every month, and these are high-end paid speaking engagements. And you are followed by tens of thousands of people. So I would love to dive into your story. Who is David post-speaker?
Who is David pre-speaker or post-speaker?
Pre-speaker, yeah.
Pre-speaker, there we go. I was going to say, we can start talking about our third act and what's next. I was going to say what's next is I'm never going to stop doing this.
Oh, good.
We have a colleague who says speakers don't retire. The phone just stops ringing. So we got to make sure the phone doesn't stop. But my background was in marketing and public relations. I had a firm. In college, I did theater and music and sang with an a cappella group for years. So I've always been on stage. But I found out about 24 years ago that you can actually get paid to share your expertise from the front of the room. And it was a great revelation. And we all have sort of mentors and people as we started out in this business. And there are people, Eric Chester was the person who brought me into this profession, Hall of Fame speaker. But my expertise was in marketing and branding and how do we better differentiate ourselves and craft the words and so I spent probably 15 plus years speaking, doing workshops and keynote speeches and master classes and others in marketing and branding, and actually made a profound shift in my business about 8 years ago that correlated with the shift in the marketplace and what the primary drivers were for customers. And so today I speak on customer experience, and more specifically, I help organizations become ridiculously easy to do business with. And my speaking model is I'm primarily a keynote speaker, but I use that to leverage additional consulting work, full day workshops, and then a variety of other products that we can talk about as well.
Fabulous. And you focus mainly, if I'm understanding, in corporate and associations.
Yeah. So on the corporate side, individual companies, a lot of franchise conferences and things as well. And then the association market has always been my bread and butter. It's big audiences full of people who are all associated with a particular industry. And so that's been much of my business. We're making some shifts, but we've been very fortunate. We've been very busy for coming up on 25 years.
Did you start out 25 years ago speaking on customer experience, or did you start and you've evolved over the years?
Right. The original, as I was saying, the original subject was marketing. And branding and message development. Not because I was chasing whatever was new and hot. I came to recognize, and I think it's really important for speakers to stay current and to stay relevant. And to do that, you have to be very conscious of what's happening in terms of market shifts and consumer behavior. If you're a business speaker, for example, and through my constant reevaluation and constant enhancement of my content, I came to realize that what I'd been talking about for 15 or so years was not nearly as effective as it was because the world had changed. And I think it's such an important lesson for speakers is to be current and to be relevant. Once again, not chasing what's new and hot. Everybody wants to jump out and suddenly talk about artificial intelligence. If you're an expert on artificial intelligence, by all means, speak about AI. But chasing something because it's a hot topic doesn't give you the right to talk about it or a level of expertise to do it. So we all have to be lifelong learners. And part of my job is to be very cognizant of what's happening in the consumer markets, B2B and B2C, and help my clients address that. So that was the impetus for the shift that I made from marketing as a primary driver of consumer behavior to that customer experience. And so today I'm all in on CX and really excited for for where the opportunities lead me. I'm fortunate. I've spoken in 26 countries around the world. And part of my job is to bring that external insights that we're seeing from other industries. When I speak to associations, for example, most of the speakers are from that industry, right, at a particular conference. So I'm the outside voice. Here's what we're seeing in the broader markets. Here's how it applies to your business. And I'm excited about work as I've ever been.
Your phone's still ringing, so you've got your finger on the dial,
yeah,
right?
But we're also dialing the phone, metaphorically. We do a lot of pitching. I'd love to talk about that, but part of, I think, the key to our longevity is that we're marketing constantly. We're pitching constantly. As a matter of fact, half of my gigs, half of my contracts for speaking and consulting are from organizations who had no idea who I was until we reached out to them. I'm not a celebrity. I'm good at what I do. There's a lot of people who are good at what they do. But if you're not on Shark Tank and you don't have that kind of name recognition, you haven't written a bestseller, you got to treat it like a business. Just like any business would, you have to market. You have to create exposure and visibility for what you do. You can't be considered by a conference producer, a meeting planner, or others if they don't know who you are. I like to say doing business without promotion is like winking at somebody in the dark.
Ooh,
you know what you're doing, but nobody else does.
I marked that one for quote for my post-production team. That's a very good one. You are fabulous, David, at calling out the nonsense in the industry. And I think one of the nonsenses are these workshops that tell you, you can become a breakout speaker within 6 months, within a year. If somebody wants to quit their day job, what would your advice be to become a speaker?
Sure. My advice is don't quit your day job until you have enough revenue that it makes sense to do, because this is a tough business. It's a great business, but it's a business. And some of the nonsense that we're often being fed, especially by people who are well-meaning, but they have no idea what this profession is. And they tell people, oh my gosh, you're such a great storyteller. You could impact people's lives. You could really make a difference in the world. Meeting planners are not paying you. They're not writing a check for you to have a cathartic experience on stage and live your life's dream of making an impact. That has nothing to do with why we're being hired. Doesn't mean that we can't do it, but we can't do it if we're not being hired. And so meeting planners, conference producers, and others, they hire us to solve their problems, increase their sales, develop their leaders, guard against disruption, understand artificial intelligence, or maybe their need is just a great entertainment after dinner. But it has nothing to do with so much of the conversation. You had mentioned that people taking the boot camps. This is a bit facetious, but people are like, I paid for a 3-day workshop on hand gestures and I can't get the phone to ring. And I'm like, why are you worried about your hand gestures? Because people, and I'm just going to say it, people really prey on newer speakers. A lot of people, and I'm going to make a lot of enemies in this, a lot of people who come out of Broadway and they're so focused on don't wander the stage and just pick a spot, move intentionally. Audiences don't care. Just be really good. Have great content. But we spend women, you can't wear bracelets because it's going to be distracting. It's utter nonsense. Nobody cares, but nobody cares. But all of the wardrobe consultants will tell you, and I tell you, the way this industry treats women is really disturbing. It's a horrible double standard. Men don't have to deal with any of that, but there's so much focus. You can't wear this, you can't wear. And the reality is you can wear whatever you want. Just be good. Just have great content. People aren't like, wow, she was really brilliant. The takeaways were monumental, but she wore bracelets, so we probably won't have her back. It's nonsense. And so I'm in this place, I'm a curmudgeon now, 25 years in. And in the halls of the National Speaker Association and others, there's so many things that are really utter distractions. I love the community, right? You're pretty. No, you're pretty. No, you're pretty. Yeah. In the meantime, conference producers are like, give me ROI. And I always say to, especially even newer speakers as well, I always say, you don't have to be great to make it in this business. You don't have to be great. You got to be good. You got to be good. But if you have great content that's actionable, and the content isn't your story of climbing Everest. If your story gives them lessons about how to improve their business, increase their sales, and understand choosing the right team and resilience and apply it that way, it can be very effective. Yeah. We have wonderful, right? You and I both, we have wonderful colleagues who've undergone tremendous challenges. The Olympic medalists and rock climbers and people who've survived cancer. But that alone isn't unique. 40 million plus people right now have survived cancer. Like 5,000 people have climbed Everest. It's not that it's unimportant. It's just not enough. What it really needs to be is really good content that helps them do what they need to do, feed their families and increase their sales or whatever that might be, or motivate their people. It can absolutely be that. But the nonsense conversation is the minutia, the nitpicky stuff that we do to each other that meeting planners don't care about. They want a great speaker that's going to fill a specific need and help their audience do whatever it is that they need to do.
Okay, I'm just writing away. This is so good. David, you're amazing. So you really touched on such important topics that I haven't dove into. 30 some odd episodes in, as this show is fairly new, gaining traction fast. So I'm really thankful
You're doing
about
great,
that.
yeah.
But we haven't dove into the nonsense that's happening out there. And it really is a trap. And newer emerging speakers are being preyed upon. When is it okay to put the cart before the horse? I know
what you mean.
You should never.
Let me answer that.
Yeah.
You have to be prepared to market, right? The meeting planners, the bureaus, the conference producers, they have to like what they see. So there has to be a certain amount of work on the front end. You have to have a great website. You have to have some video footage. And there's ways of getting, even if you're newer in this business. Meeting planners are incredibly hardworking, but they're also very risk averse. They can't take a chance. So if they can't see you speak, they're not going to take a chance. They may have one conference a year. And pardon the language, the speakers cannot suck, right? And so anything we can do to give them confidence that we know what we're doing, that checks a big box. So in terms of putting the cart before the horse, before we go to market, you have to have something that's marketable. And so you have to have a good website. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I don't think I've ever spent more than $300 on a website, but you have to have video. But here's the other part. You have to have, and especially for those who are the heart-led speakers, and I have great respect for that, but you have to have a title and a tagline that is fundable, that they're willing to pay. If your title is My Journey to Wellness, I don't know why I would pay for that. But if that title was How to Leverage Your Wellness to Increase Your Profits, it's a bad example, but it's clearly focused on them. Mm-hmm. Or if you say, I have invented the chocolate pudding leadership method, and you're very excited about it. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Here's what it means. If you have to explain it, you've lost them because you're not going to be there every time. So one of the core fundamentals, putting that cart before the horse, is you have to have a fundable value proposition. The stage isn't your therapy. If you've been through a lot of things, it's valuable in what you can deliver to the audience. It's not about your story. It's you use your story to help them in some way. And if that's clear in terms of your value proposition, clear on your website, and then a great title and tagline, and you have some video footage, and there's ways of getting it, like I said, then you got a real chance to get started. And then it's an issue, and we'll talk about this, but it's an issue of building your business.
So essentially, and we're talking putting the horse before the cart, not putting the cart before the horse, right? Which is where we're often getting these little distractions that we're buying that isn't hitting on that core thing. You started out with effective messaging. I think that really probably gave you
really important
clarity, and you have to not be all over the place. Yeah, David is fabulous, but I can't remember. I think he's about this, or maybe he's about that, or maybe he's about, it was very definable.
Yeah, that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a website and it says specializing in time management, organization, leadership, marketing, the more things you have, the less likely you're going to get hired at all. There are riches and niches. Pick a lane. And it's hard, especially for the Renaissance men and women who aspire to be speakers, because you've done so many things. The more things you do, the less likely you're going to get hired. Because you give one particular subject, somebody's name comes to mind. They might own that space. So you have to find what's the one thing, what's the message. If you were going to stand on that soapbox or that mountaintop and shout it to the world, what is that? And it has to do with something that benefits them, or it affects them, or warns them, right? Your story, your experience is incredibly important, but only as a filter through which you deliver the message for them. So it's one of the hardest things for, like I said, the heart-led speakers who have a unique experience. I went through this. And so this is it can be incredible. I don't have a great story. So I have to have great content, and I have great humor, and I have charisma, or whatever that is, right? Because I know what I leverage, because I need to make a living, because I have 5 colleges I'm paying for and 3 full-time staff. But it's not just quality, but it's differentiation. You have to win. Does that make sense?
Not
ultimately,
quality, differentiation. You have to win.
Yeah,
yes.
you got to be different, but it's got to be fundable. And that's the hardest part, especially for those who have stories. Because stories are great, but they're not buying the story. They're buying the lesson from the story. They're buying the learning that comes from your unique experience. And there's not enough conversation to help these wonderful messengers recognize what the business looks like. Because I'll add one more thing. The big lie of this profession is that if you have passion in your heart, and you have a fire in your belly, and you have a story to tell, and you have a good stage skills, you can make it as a speaker. In some ways, that might be the entry fee, but they still don't know who you are. You still have to have a great title. You have to do marketing. We do a lot of pitch letters. We're sending out every week to prospects to introduce me to them, but it's not enough. The phone's not going to ring. I'm up at 5 a.m. I go to the gym. I try and be at my desk by 6:30 or 7, because it's a job. And people say all the time, it's not my job. It's not my work. It's my passion. It better be your work. You can be passionate about it, but it better be your work if you want to make a living. That the most elusive thing in this industry is longevity. There are tens of thousands of speakers. I'd love to dive into that.
Yeah. We'll shelve fundable, because I do want to revisit that. But why are a lot of speakers starving and burning out at about the 2-year mark? Tell me the difference between you with the longevity and you're rocking and rolling, right, in the industry, versus someone who has a great message. They're a great person, but they're just not making it.
The parallel that I draw is probably the best actor or actress. I guess we'll call them all actors now, because we're not going to be sexist. The best in the world is probably waiting tables somewhere in New York, because the opportunity hasn't come along. They haven't been visible enough. They haven't been, right? Talent is important, but it's the entry fee. A great story is important, but it's the entry fee. To answer your question, why do most speakers starve? And most speakers starve is because they don't have a business behind the message. And they think the phone's going to ring. We said this 30 years ago, right? If you build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door. They don't anymore. Now you got a warehouse full of mousetraps and 10,000 other people doing the same thing. So the key for us, and there was a seminal moment in my business where we could have fallen victim to that as well, was I had a colleague, Dave Horsager, who's a Hall of Fame speaker on trust, is a great friend. 15 years ago, we were at an NSA conference, and I was talking about my business, and he said to me, "You don't have a business." And I said, "What are you talking about? This is like my best year ever. My new book had come out." And he says, "No, you don't have a business. You have gigs." And I said, "What's the difference?" He said, let me ask you a question. He goes, how much money are you going to make next year? How much are you going to make next year? I said, "I have no idea." I said, "Of course you don't. How would you know? You have no processes. How are you finding contacts and turning them into leads, and leads into prospects, and prospects into paying customers?" He says, "I know speakers that made 7 figures who couldn't pay their mortgage 2 years later because the phone stopped ringing." And so it was a profound moment. I went back and had a conversation with my wife. I didn't sleep. And we put processes in place. We have a CRM, or customer relationship management. You can do Speaker Flow or Infusionsoft, which we call Confusionsoft, but a way of tracking leads. So every day we find meetings, we find organizations, conferences, and we look at who were their speakers last year, when's their conference this year, what city, what's the date, and who's the person in charge, and we put it into our CRM. And if they have their conference coming up in 2 months, we're not going to pitch them because they already have their speakers. Then we put a task that sets a reminder 2 months after their conference, because we know that's when they're going to start looking at next year. We send them a pitch letter. And I want to introduce David Avrin. He's one of the best customer experience, blah, blah, blah. If you want to skip the rest of this letter, just click on this link and watch his preview video. You'll see in 3 minutes why, blah, blah, blah. And then we put a task to follow up again in 2 weeks if they haven't responded. If they do respond, then we do a video email. I send them a copy of my book. This is a business. And the other part is we don't automate anything ever. You can be very efficient and send out 100,000, and then you wonder what to do the next day because you got no responses. We tailor every one. Is it hard? Sure. Does it take time? Yeah. And when you look at what we get paid, it's worth every minute of it. But it's a business behind it. Because imagine if you had any other kind of business, what would you do? You'd do the same thing, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You do marketing. You say, who's my core market? What do they watch? What do they read? Where do they recreate and congregate? I know it's a long answer to your question, but the question is, what do we do that's different, that causes longevity? Is we have a business behind the speaking.
You and I did not rehearse this at all. And you probably don't even realize what you just did, but I'm so thankful for what you just said, because it's one of the biggest messages that I try to get out there. You can either be a person who speaks now and then and call yourself a speaker, or you can treat it like a real business and make it your business model, or at least a major part of your business model. You don't know this, so you weren't trying to promote what we're doing in the back end. But I have a whole software system called Speak Leads. And it's for that reason. The average speaker does not treat their business like a business, and they don't even know where to begin. So we do 80% of that for them. And I'm not pitching our service. I'm
writing it down right now because I'm going to follow up with you after this.
Yes, let's definitely talk about that. I love that you brought that up, David, because I really do believe that is key if you are going to be around for the 25, 30 years and be at a place where you're getting those 3 to 5 to 10 engagements per month that you want. Hopefully not 10, because you need to be able to breathe and
you want to be home occasionally. Let me answer that one. God forbid you have such problems as you have 10 opportunities a month. You know what? When you have, first of all, you have the opportunity at that point to use the most powerful word in the English language, which is no, or no, thank you. Or when you have that kind of demand, you raise your fees, right? And if some of them can't afford, then that's okay. Because we all ask the question, what's it worth for us to leave our family? And so I remember we're new empty nesters now, and we've got 5 kids grown and gone. Doesn't mean they're off the payroll, but at least they're out of the house. But that was always sort of our criteria. And I remember listening to my assistant, and we've been able to grow. And she was talking to a prospect, and they were like, I was going to do their morning keynote. And they said, how much for him to do a breakout session early afternoon? And she says, no, I don't think you understand. David loves this. You're just paying for him to leave his wife and kids. Once he's there, just crank him up and set him loose. And I looked at her, I said, do you say that? She goes, I always say that. I said, that's actually true. But I love what I do. But when people talk about, I want to make an impact and I want to touch people's lives, if you're not booking gigs, you will make an impact only sporadically and you will touch very few lives. But the nonsense and the misguided advice is often about the things that drive us, or the minutia about performance and presentation. Performance is absolutely important, but you got to be out there. I hear so many people talking about speaking their truth and stepping into their power. And I throw up in my mouth a little bit every time I say that. I'm going to offend a lot of people when I say it, because that's fine if that's what motivates you and gets you up in the morning, but it has absolutely nothing to do with why you're being hired. Yeah. Now, if speaking your truth has some profound lessons that will help an organization, an audience move forward, or whatever that might be, if you're doing personal empowerment seminars and you've got a measure of a following, by all means. But it's when those conversations happen in lieu of the business conversations. Last year for the National Speakers Association, it was really an amazing conference. We had multiple sessions on storytelling, and they were brilliant. Kelly Swanson, it was brilliant. But I looked at all of it, and there was I couldn't find a single session on how to book more paid speaking gigs. Why do people leave this profession? Because they don't have enough paid speaking gigs. And so that's my crusade. And I think I've earned the right to be a little bit of a contrarian in that, but it comes from a good place. I'm coming from the right kind of heart, because there's enough work for everyone. I think, and don't quote me on this statistic, I think there's 600 conferences going on every day in Las Vegas. Every day. There's enough work. We've just got to get in front of the right people who are making the decisions with a value proposition that they want to hire.
Yes. And talk about the fact that you have earned the right to put a stamp on certain things. You absolutely have. You've proven the process. One thing I find really rare and admirable about your process is you're probably at the place where you can attract some of the top agencies, the top bureaus. You could probably relax a bit. You don't need to be dialing for those gigs. You don't necessarily have to have a staff of 3. Let's just say, right, for the outreach, you could, but you chose to stay in the driver's seat of your own career and not to put that on other people. I'm sure you've got those who are maybe bureaus, maybe agencies who recommend you, but that you haven't sat back on that. You've decided to take your career into your own hands. Yeah.
Yeah. And for a couple of reasons. One is I love what I do. I do, as much as it seems like I mock it, I do enjoy impacting people's lives and helping people feed their family and help organizations grow. That fills my tank. But speaking is not a business. Getting the gig is the business. Speaking is the passion. I love what I do. And the only way I can do it as much as I want to do it in the amazing places I get to travel is if I book the gigs. And as I get older and we see younger and younger people getting into the profession, you got to stay hungry and stay on top of things. I think we can be forgotten very quickly. I wouldn't say that fear is a big motivator, but I don't think we can take our foot off the gas. Even during the pandemic, which was a very scary time for our profession, right? I make my living traveling on airplanes to live conferences. And gee, what went away for 2.5 years?
Yikes,
so
right?
We made the pivot. I built a studio and I did 87 virtual presentations on a webcam in my basement home studio. And I think I did a really good job, but we did it because I don't know what plan B is. So I don't know that I can take my foot off the gas. And I think what I've seen is with other colleagues, as soon as they do, they're forgotten quickly. And I want to stay relevant. I want to stay active. I want to continue to earn to, like I said, I got 5 colleges that pay for. And yeah, I'm excited. This is like the best time. I'm 60 years old. And I know more than I've ever known. I think I'm smarter than I hope we're all lifelong learners. And yeah, I'm not exhausted because I'm energized by what I do. If we did all this work and weren't successful, that would be pretty frustrating. But part of it is we've learned what works and what doesn't work over the years. And once again, back to that longevity thing as well. We see so many, and I just see so many colleagues who could be great at this, but they don't do the business part. And they think if they have a great keynote, because you'll see that online on some of the speaker pages and stuff. If I'm a newer speaker, if I could only do one thing, I hear that all the time. I say, if you could do one thing, go get a job, because it's not one thing, but it's worth it. But it's worth it. It's having a great title, having a great descriptor, a strong presentation with clear takeaways, a good website, footage every time you can get it, outreach, all of those things. Who knew? It's a business. And the people who leave this profession, they do it because they don't have a business.
I hope you're hearing this, our beautiful audience, right? I hope you're hearing this, because this is what's going to set you apart from that speaker who fizzles out. In a couple of years, David said, you can be the best of the best. But if you don't have the business part down, you don't have a business, and it's not going to last. I echo what you were saying, David. This is a very fickle industry. You become irrelevant, overexposed. It's a complex and very highly competitive space. And it takes you being on it, and it takes you being willing to put that elbow grease in at the 5-year mark, at the 10-year mark, at the 15-year mark, at the 30, if you're really serious about it. But I also echo, this is one of the most fabulous lifestyles you can have. Speaker life is a fabulous lifestyle. You get to now that you guys are empty nesters, you get to take your wife to really pretty amazing places. I think you're going to be in Dubai.
I'm going to be in Dubai next month. I'm going to be in Vienna and Malta and London. And I don't do that. It's not geographic name dropping. It's because we work hard for exposure to get those gigs. And it's an amazing one. But even before, I was the only dad that was at all my kids' parent-teacher conferences. And I turned down a lot of work that when my middle daughter was playing high school basketball, her last 2 years playing varsity ball, I missed 2 games in 2 years.
Wow.
Because I wasn't going to miss that. Now, if I had a regular job that I had to be at whatever office, I wouldn't be able to have the freedom. So it's a wonderful life. It can be a great lifestyle if we're generating revenue. And there's a disconnect. People think the revenue comes from having a great story and stepping into our power or whatever those things are. And that's just, it's a side part of it. The revenue comes from the business part of it. Once again, and I love that line, it's just speaking isn't a business. It's getting the gig is the business.
Mm-hmm. Key. Yeah. And we're going to dive into some deeper insights here in a moment. But sure. I know by this time, there are a whole bunch of people who want to know more about you. How do they follow you? How do they find you? Tell us about your new book, all the good things.
Sure. Real quickly, it's davidavrin.com. It's just my name.com, AVRIN. On social media, it's my name. In most places, it's the real David Avrin, hundreds of fake ones. It's a catfish story for a whole nother day. But if you see lots of followers and connections, it's the real me. Otherwise, it's not. And I've got books online. My most current book, which is one I'm really proud of, is my book, Ridiculously Easy to Do Business With. It's a practical guide to giving customers what they want, how and when they want it. And that's my whole mantra. And the work that I do with clients is to help them eliminate friction in their process, become ridiculously easy to do business with. I've written 7 books and we're in 5 different languages. But I started out just like everybody else. And my first book, I remember my friends from college go, wait, Dave Avrin wrote a book? Right? I know. I'm like, I know, but it's the things that you build. And I talk to people who are earlier in their career. Sometimes people are earlier in their career at 50, 60, 70 years old. Doesn't mean they're new to the world. They're just new to speaking. But I would say, don't compare your chapter 2 to my chapter 14, because we've all been there. But I also think it's really important for those of us who have enjoyed a measure of success. What do they say? It's important to send the elevator back down. And so as we share and we try and help, I would love to see more speakers stick with it, make a living, feed their family, and make that impact on the world, on organizations, on audiences, or whatever that might be. So I'm taking a portion of my time and trying to deliver this really important message to help newer speakers move beyond, in addition to those things that fill their heart and who they want to impact and the lives they want to touch. It can all happen if you're booking gigs.
You shared with me when we were chatting before going live, something that was really revealing about the man you are, the heart you have, and that are colleagues, people that you've come in contact with that you really find to be fabulous people. And it really disappoints you or breaks your heart that they give up on getting their voice out there. That is really hard to see. I have a backstory that's similarly passionate about getting good voices out there. There's a shortage of good voices out there. Just turn on the news, right? You can see that. I love that you said that just because you're 50, 60, 70, I actually represent somebody who has spoken alongside Zig Ziglar for 30 years, and he's in his 80s, Brian Flanagan, and he's basically reinventing himself now as his own brand. And he's into where people think that they're going to just kick back and not work anymore. No, I still have a message. I still have value to bring to the marketplace. So I love that you touched on that. It's not about age. It's about your energy, like what you really want to get out there in the world.
Yeah. I think it's also about applicability. It's got to be applicable to something. And so when you look at those who make the decisions of what speakers to hire for a particular event, once again, not talking about those who are doing their own conferences, but I don't do my own conferences. I'm hired by clients to come and speak to their audience. The question they ask is, does what David Avrin have to say, does it apply? Does it solve some problem within our organization? You look at the strategic goals of a particular conference. Maybe they're rolling out new products. Maybe they want to kick off their sales. What's the content that you're going to bring? It can be from your story. It can be from your experience. It can be from your successes or failures. But it's not just that the content has to apply to their audience and with some tangible takeaways, but the packaging has to make it clear what that takeaway is. Because I'm always like, you can say whatever you want on stage. If it works and they're happy with you, that's great. But they're going to judge a book by its cover. They're going to look at small clips of you speaking. They're going to look at the title and the subject matter, and they're going to ask a very simple question. Would my audience benefit from this? Is that a good use of this slot? Because they may have a conference that goes on for 3 days. They may have 40 breakout speakers, and they may have 3 speakers they're actually going to pay. and you're one of those three, or you aspire to be, and they have 1,000 people to choose from. And it can be a little daunting, but it isn't if we're really clear of who we're marketing to. We have a team. I did it all myself for 10 years before I brought a team on board, but I didn't pitch to organizations who wouldn't hire me. Because like I talk about customer experience, I'm not pitching the National Association of Operating Room Nurses. They have conferences, but their customers are asleep, right? They're anesthetized. So my message doesn't mean anything to them. Medical conferences or certain governmental things or research, it's not my audience. So if we're clear on our audience and we're exposing ourselves and they see relevance and it's applicable, because we can tell our story, but they're not going to pay you for your story unless they're clear of how your story will benefit them, which means it's very incumbent upon us. That's that homepage on our website. That's the clips that you choose to show as part of your speaker reel. And it's a process. If you're new in this, it can take 6 months or longer to put those pieces in place before you're ready to say, okay, world, here I am. What do you think? Mm-hmm. They better say something nice. Otherwise, don't go to market yet because you're not ready.
This ties in so beautifully to what you said earlier about being fundable, and it's complex. It sounds easier than it is. Let me know if you agree. And if you don't,
Sure.
I would love to hear your thoughts. What I find speakers do is they pitch and market to the audience they're going to be speaking to when the
Right.
audience isn't who's hiring them. You have to
That's exactly
pitch
right.
to the person who's going to bring you in. Definitely show that you're a sure bet because they're not going to gamble. But that's understanding who their audience is. So in a way, you're pitching to their audience, but you're not. You're pitching to them to show them how you're going to make them look like a rock star, basically, for bringing David.
100% right. We're on the same page. I always say we have two audiences, right? We have the audience that we're speaking to, and then we have the audience who's paying us to be there. And that's during the presentation. But on the front end, our job is to convince the gatekeeper that their audience will love this and that they will be a hero. And we say those words specifically. And we actually say that. My assistant will say that, listen, you're going to be a hero for bringing Dave in. He's that good. Because they have so much on the line. When I talk about meeting planners, those who make the decision or who might bring the information to a committee or whatever that might be, they're very risk averse. They can't take a chance. And so they will opt for very good over the promise of great if that promise carries risk. If they're worried about an accent, or if they're worried that you haven't spoken enough times, or there were anything that becomes a negative checkout, they're going to go for as close to a sure thing as possible. So you're correct. Our audience is the people who are making the decision. And what they want, we want to help them exhale, right? We want to help them go, it's exactly what we want. They get off a call with you, a discovery call, maybe as they're looking to make a decision. They get off the call, and at the very end, they're going, perfect. This is exactly what we want to hear. We were talking about this. You've given us some new ideas. This is exactly what we want, right? You end that call and you feel pretty good.
Do you find that you're so much goodness, David? I wish we had 3 hours together. I know we're starting.
Oh, we'll do it again. We'll do it again sometime.
Let's do that. So do you find that your next best engagement comes from your last best engagement or your last engagement? And that is by maybe creating more of an experience and just getting up there and spilling out a talk?
Here's the good news. There's a lot of ways to do this, right? We know people who are very, almost on the spectrum, management kinds of people. And if that's what that conference needs and wants, it's perfect. But then we also know people who are just off the wall, zany, crazy, who can get away with things. And we've also know speakers, well-known speakers who will spew profanity. It's not me. Most audiences won't. But the ones who hire those people, they already know who they are. So the good news, there's a lot of ways to do this right. You just got to be good. Yep. And you have to deliver something that moves the needle for them. Like I said, maybe their need is that they just need entertainment after dinner. Maybe they need somebody who's known for entertainment, but they have a message, right? Everybody who says that they do infotainment think that they created the term. And you look online, there's 43 million uses of the term infotainment. But if that's what that slot is looking for, then it's a good fit. This is good news for speakers. There's a lot of ways to do this right. The ways to do it wrong is to focus on your drivers, your story, your message. I want to make an impact on people's lives. You can say that, but you just can't say it in your marketing. You can say that to your friends. That can be your driver. Listen, whatever gets you up in the morning and helps you do the work you need to do. But from their perspective, they need to know that you're good at what you do so that they can breathe. That at least we know working with a pro. They have to see relevance in your subject matter, in your title and tag. And then the hard part, which is out of your control, which is you have to be a better choice than the other choices that they're considering. Mm-hmm. And I've lost gigs to colleagues. I lost a gig to Snooki from Jersey Shore.
That would hurt. I'm sorry.
That hurt. And I'm like, and it was through a bureau, and they came back and said, yeah, they chose Snooki. And I said, Snooki from Jersey Shore? So yeah, it was like some university, like faculty thing or something. They paid like $30,000 for somebody who had nothing to say, but there was star power, right? Mm-hmm. Celebrity is a whole different category, right? Because they can be a draw, whatever that is. But I don't want to be repetitive. But I think as long as we leverage that message, that driver into something that's clearly beneficial for them, then we're in the running.
Do you have so much goodness, David? Do you or your staff make concerted effort to, once you've done an engagement, it's gone, which it goes very well. Yeah. Once you've done an engagement, to ask for introductions or referrals or more engagements within that particular organization? And how do you handle that?
Yeah, I wish it was more successful than it is. We've always asked. I have other colleagues who say that they make it part of their contract, that they will get a testimonial and 3 introductions. I have never known anybody who actually did it. We can ask for it, but we also don't want to be those people who are a pain in the sides of our clients. We want to do great work for them. I always ask, we'll always say, or we'll do a follow-up. We'll do a follow-up thank you. We'll do a follow-up with the slides for those who were in attendance. And half of the presentations we have are to organizations who were referrals from somebody who saw me speak. And then the other half were just from the outreach that we did.
How often do you get on the same stage again? Do most stages it's one and done, or one and done for 5 years? What have you seen?
Most are one and done, because if a conference has you, they're not going to have you again. It's always very gratifying when an organization has you back again and again. And we always have some that will do that. But there's some that doesn't even matter if it's 5 years or 10 years. There's no shortage of speakers to choose from. It's one of the hard parts about this business model. It's that we're always looking for the next opportunity. But the point is, in our model, we're not doing a gig and then we're looking for the next one. We're always looking for the next one. And so we're booking well into next year. It's crushing when somebody calls and says, hey, are you available on this date? And we're not, because can you do it the next day? Because I would love to have both of those. But we try to leverage it. One of the things that I do that I think is really important is when I get done keynoting a conference, I always make sure I stick around, shake everybody's hands behind the sound booth. And I don't want to be that prima donna. If they have a dinner or a reception the night before, I'm always there. But there's an opportunity to talk to people afterwards. And somebody will come up, maybe I'm signing books, and they say, you know what, I'm also on the board for this organization. And that was just great. And I think you would be a really good. So we're taking cards, we're following up with everybody, I'm writing notes on the back of them, but we're really diligent in terms of our follow-up. But the other thing that we always do is I always talk to the person who hired me, and I give them a heartfelt thank you. And this was such an honor to be here. And I always say, let me know when you're starting to plan for next year's event. If you're open to it, I would love to suggest some brilliant colleagues of mine who I think would knock it out of the park for you. So I'm a big believer in giving referrals and referring my colleagues, because I know they're not going to hire me again the next year. I think if MCs can sometimes get hired year after year, but I try, and I think it's so important that we refer colleagues as well. And if you get a referral from someone and they get you a gig that maybe $10,000 or more, don't send them a Starbucks gift card. Seriously, friends, like, think big. And that's we think big when somebody sends it. Yeah. But I'll throw one more thing, especially for newer speakers. And this one's a little bit tough. Do not ask for referrals from people who have not seen you speak, because they can't. They're not going to do it as a favor. Their obligation is to their client, and they will send your name to them if they know you're going to be good for them. but they can't do it just as a favor. People call me all the time and say, hey, would it be great if you could refer me? Or others will ask, say, hey, can I get your client list so I can? No, you can't. We've worked very hard for that. But referrals are a really important part. Sometimes the referrals come from a happy customer or client. I got a call this morning about that. And sometimes they're from colleagues. I think it's just such a gracious gesture that when you get done speaking at a conference, ask the meeting planner, ask the person who hired you, say, are you open to some suggestions? I'd love to refer some colleagues for next year.
Such fabulous insights. And did you have a through line from the beginning of the time that we've talked to now as we're wrapping up, in that there's plenty of work for everyone, right? There's no lack mentality, as long as you're willing to put in that consistent forever work and you treat it like a business. Yeah. I love that you refer your quote unquote competitors, right? You lost an engagement not long ago. I think you talked about to a colleague, which I'm sure you're happy for.
Happens
you
all
win
the time.
Plenty that your friends don't win, but it always comes back around. I love that you do that.
We play the long game. And the other nice thing about this profession, because we're a really unique profession in professional speaking. I think we probably have the most diverse organization in the world, because the only thing we have in common is that we present our ideas from the front of the room. Those ideas can be all over the map. You've got the sales trainers, you got the woo-woo, align your chakras, tree people, and there's a place for everyone. But the wonderful thing, and one of the wonderful things about the National Speakers Association, is it's just such a gracious community of teachers and sharers and learners. And we all help each other. Many of us watched our kids grow up together. Some of us are competitors, but we're colleagues and we're friends. And that's one of the benefits of the community of this profession, because it's an interesting dichotomy, because it's a lonely profession in that I'll sometimes have audiences in the hundreds or maybe even in the thousands, but 98% of my time I'm by myself. And there's this interesting chasm between coming off stage and having 800 people applauding, and then they line up to get books signed or want to take a picture, and then they leave and they go to their next session, and I pack up my box and I go back to my hotel room and I change clothes and I unpack and I get in the Uber and I go out to lunch, or and most of the time I'm by myself. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's really interesting. There aren't office buildings full of professional speakers. So any chance that we have to connect together as an industry is a really powerful and wonderful time. And as of the recording of this, for those listening to the recording, we're heading into the weekend of the National Speakers Association. I call it the annual gathering of the extroverts, but it's family. It's hugs and catching up on people's lives and others who share this crazy business.
Yes, and you'll be a keynote this year, but I know
I'm
that you
fortunate to be on the big stage this year. Yeah.
Yes, that's fabulous. Definitely go if you're going to be there. I know that many of my listeners are likely to be there. Find David, shake his hand, look at his books, just
give me a hug.
Give him a hug. That is just one of the beautiful things about going to an event like the NSA. I don't know that there's really any other organization out there quite like them, but the people you meet are just of such a caliber that alone makes the sacrifice worth it.
Yeah.
To go and do that. Okay. As we wrap today, which I thank you for saying we can do this again, because there's so much more I want to dive into with you. We're going to end with our signature question. And as this is Speak Pact and our collective, your and my collective, to ask those with a voice, those who want to really make a difference in their lifetime as they prosper, our mandate is we make a pact to impact. So can you leave our audience with one thing that they could do to really have that longevity, be that speaker who is not the one that becomes a statistic in 2 years, but who actually makes it for the long haul, gets that kind of lifestyle and income that they really seek, and most importantly, gets that impact that they want to make. So what is your pact to impact for our audience?
I think it dovetails on the message that I've been giving the whole time, which is be clear of who your audience is. And that audience has to be able to pay you. If you are independently wealthy, then disregard everything else I'm going to say. But ask yourself this question: who with money needs to hear what I have to say? Who with money would benefit? And this isn't me being a capitalist saying, I'm saying we have to feed our families. We can impact more audiences if we are hireable. So who with money needs to hear what it is that I have to say? And then, of course, we look at how do we get in front of them? How do we look impressive to them as well? But we spend a lot of time, especially early on, focusing on our message and our drivers and our story. We need to pause and look outward and say, who can I sell this to? And there is no shame in sales. It's what feeds all of our families. But if you can marry those two, then you've got a real chance at launching into this career in a good way. And of course, you keep asking the question as the audiences change and as the times change and the technology and the buying habits change. That continued modification and relevance is what keeps us working long term. But on the front end, that pack to impact, be clear on the audience. And it has to be an audience who can afford to pay you to deliver your brilliance.
You heard it from David Avrin. Look him up, davidavrin.com or David Avrin in all the socials. Definitely seek out his books. He's got 7 strong, right? This is your 7th?
Yeah, right? Just this one, the new one.
Look at the new one. Look at the new one.
Just the new one. The old ones are old.
All right, David, you've been such an incredible guest. Thank you for sharing your hard-earned insights with us and your most precious commodity, and that's also unrenewable, your time. Thank you for all that you gave to us today.
Thank you.
All right, and for everybody else, ciao, ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the Speak Pact podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the Speak Pact movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1, ANTONIETTE, or simply #SpeakPact.